Good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Thursday, August 26th, 2021. And our top story today, rethinking whether to take a student loan. Joining me now to discuss this and a lot more is Betsy Mayotte. She is the founder and president of the Institute of Student Loan Advisors. Betsy, great to see you again. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Nice to see you too.
Yeah, I hope you had a great weekend. I hope you're having a great week. Let's, before we kind of dive into this rethinking student loans, let's talk about this recent announcement from our friends at the Department of Education.
Yeah, so, I say the hits keep coming with under the current administration. They seem to be doing whatever they can to make it easier for especially the most vulnerable borrowers to get the relief they need. And the latest is with totally and permanently disabled borrowers. So if you're someone who's unable to work due to injury or illness, and that's anticipated to go on for 5 consecutive years, then you've always been able to apply for discharge. However, there's a category of borrowers who are receiving Social Security disability under the 5 to 7 year review period. Now, what that means is that Social Security only requires you to re-up your eligibility every 5 to 7 years. Some people get reviewed every year, some people get reviewed every 2, but for those that are considered the most permanently disabled, you only have to do it every 5 to 7. So what the department has done is, instead of making those people apply, they're connecting with Social Security, comparing those people on that list with those with federal student loans, and automatically discharging their loans so they don't have to go through the process, which is huge.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's amazing that two government systems are talking to one another, but it represents, that's a joke, well, true joke, but represents about $5.8 billion in student loans, Betsy. That's a significant number when you factor in that there's $1.7 trillion in student loan debt as of 2020. So this is a milestone. So all you need to do is make sure that your Social Security status is updated so that you are shown as disabled. Is that how you would get this opportunity?
Right. You really don't have to, if you're eligible under this category, and there's multiple ways to be eligible for total and permanent disability discharge, but this change mostly affects those that would apply under that SSDI status. So if you are under that SSDI status, then you should expect to receive some sort of correspondence about this by the end of the year. I think they said they were going to get started in September. Now, the other thing that they're doing is, the other way you can get disability discharge is if your doctor certifies that you're disabled. That's sort of the old school way. But for those borrowers and those applying under SSDI, there was this 3-year monitoring period where you'd be required to submit proof of income for 3 years. And the reason they did that is to avoid fraud. If you say that you're disabled and you can't work, therefore you can't pay your loans, it might pose some questions if the year after your loans are discharged, your income is, $60,000. The problem with that is that more than half of borrowers were neglecting to respond to those letters and were getting their loans reinstated. So the other thing the Biden administration did is they've eliminated that requirement that you submit proof of income for the 3 years. So that should make things a lot easier for these borrowers that need the relief.
We'll have to see how this all kind of plays out. It sounds like it's a positive move for these people who are unable to earn income and have all this student loan debt. Debt really weighs people down. Let's talk a little bit. I know we want to talk about rethinking student loans, and we will, but let's just talk about forbearance. I think the last time we chatted, I don't know if the announcement was out yet, but the federal government has extended forbearance, I think, through January 2022. Get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I wasn't surprised. For the past 2 months or so, I've been thinking that they were going to extend the COVID waivers. And I did think they would do it to the end of January. They made it clear in this announcement that this is it. Unless something enormous happens, this is going to be the last extension. So I think it was smart, considering all the other balls that are in the air this fall. in particular, the fact that Fed Loan Servicing and Granite State, another student loan servicer, have announced that they're not renewing their contracts. So that's about 10 million accounts that need to be transferred to new servicers. We also have a negotiated rulemaking this fall. So the Department of Ed has a lot of really complicated issues on their plates. And so I think extending the waiver to the end of January just gives the Department of Ed and borrowers and the student loan servicers more time to prepare for the faucet to get turned back on.
Faucets get turned back on, and I guess the time of forbearance to be added to the amortization or the period of the loan. Betsy, we're gonna spill over into the second segment, rethinking student loans, but I want to kind of tee up the conversation before we go to commercial break. A lot of kids going back to school now, assuming they meet the requirements, whether it's a vaccine or mask mandate or whatever the rationale is in that particular school. But let's just talk about considerations for taking the student loan. What are some of the things that you need to be thinking about? And again, we're going to have to spill this over into the second segment. So real quick, maybe a minute, 2 minutes, what are things that families need to be thinking about in terms of these loans?
I think the most important thing to think about is once school is over, whether the amount of debt is going to be affordable. I mean, you need to be thinking way ahead and not thinking so much as far as what the big number is going to be, but more importantly, what the monthly payment amount is going to be.
Yeah, obviously, you got to have a little forethought here. And I know you've always said that cost of education, very expensive. That seems to be the real issue, not the symptoms that we've been talking about, the student loan debt, et cetera. Betsy, it's a good tease. It's a great, quick response to that. When we come back, we'll talk more with Betsy about rethinking taking student loans. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM.
You need a financial plan that fits the way you want to live in retirement. A plan that can help grow and protect your money, now or in the future. With an annuity in your plan to help cover essential expenses, you'll have the freedom to live the retirement you want. This is what an annuity can do. Find the right financial professional to show you how. Learn more at protectedincome.org.
Are you stuck with a low credit score? A credit report and score that's causing you to be denied credit or pay higher interest rates than others for the same things? Then do what Terrence did and call Credit Repaired for your free credit evaluation to help restore your credit.
I started thinking about buying a new house, and my score wasn't where I needed it to be. I called and spoke with one of the representatives, and we just had a good conversation, and I liked what he was saying.
Just one call for his free credit evaluation was all it took to start back on the track to repairing his credit.
I'm seeing the deletions and I'm getting the report, so I know something's being done. It does make a difference to me.
All it takes is one call to get started.
Credit Repair has given me a second chance to have a better credit score.
Don't let a low credit score hold you back another day. Do what Terrence did and make the call for your free credit evaluation.
Call 800-819-4152. That's 800-819-4152. Again, 800-819-4152.
Welcome back. We're talking to Betsy Mayotte of the Institute of Student Loan Advisors. Betsy, thanks so much for staying with us this morning.
Yeah, no problem.
It's always a pleasure chatting with you. I feel like I walk out more educated about student loans, and I'm a smarter guy because of it. I think our audience appreciates it as well. All right, so we kind of went to some considerations at the end of our first segment, but let's talk about having that frank conversation with our children about school and the things that you need to think about. The school may have a great football team. They may have great academics. They may have a great alumni network, but they might have a very expensive tuition that could be difficult to repay depending on what occupation you actually choose to go into. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, I hate to, college is about the college experience. It's not just about the education, but in the long term, I hate to say it, you got to look at the return on investment. The days of education for education's sake, sadly, are over because of the cost of higher education. And parents need to be cognizant. I know we want to send our kids to their dream school, but keep in mind that 70% of students change either schools or degrees at some point during, for those that are approaching a 4-year undergraduate degree. So even though that your student may say, oh, this school is the only one for me, the chances are very good they're actually going to change schools at some point. So it's okay to say no if it's just not an affordable option for a family.
And then for those guidance counselors out there at the schools that are helping, I remember when I was going to school and they said, well, based on your grades and academic record, and it's a little different world 30 years ago, but they said these would be the schools that you should consider. That should probably play a role. Some of these other considerations should be in those recommendations. It's not enough to just say, hey, I visited XYZ's campus and it was phenomenal, and I really enjoyed going to that class or that event. I mean, it really is getting good guidance and good recommendations as well from these stewards of our children.
Yeah, and there's a lot of tools online now. You can look at, average debt level, average graduation rate, default rates, average starting salary. The college scorecard that is put out by the Department of Education is a great tool that wasn't around when you and I were making our college choice.
I'm sorry. I was going to make a quip that we just had like a book, and the book, it was like U.S. News and World Report put out a book, and you had to like page through. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
The other thing is, it's not just about I'm going to go to this school. I'm going to make the college choice decision now, and then that's it. Absolutely not. In fact, a great strategy to keep student loan debt down is to go to a smaller priced school for maybe the first 2 years, and then transfer into the dream school. Most of the primary credits for freshman and sophomore year, regardless of the degree, are all about the same. So that can be a way to reduce the cost. And then if the student does change their mind on their degree or the school, you haven't taken as much of a financial hit.
Betsy, let's talk about community college. We've talked about that with you and others on this network. Community college, I think, kind of what you're alluding to, with a lesser expensive school, community colleges can really be a nice avenue, especially when you're trying for reduced costs, but they have great curricula that you can go through to kind of figure out your path, whether or not you want to do something maybe a little bit more vocational, or you want to, you like computers, to figure out if you like computers. And from my understanding, community college enrollment actually was down during the pandemic.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Community colleges, we're really lucky here in Massachusetts. We have some really fantastic community colleges and quite a few of them. And you're right, it can be a way to not only reduce cost, but also to maybe try out a couple different paths, academic paths, to see where you have an affinity.
Yeah, because you really don't know. I mean, unless you are hard set on being a surgeon, or you have made up your mind at a very young age. I mean, I think like anything in life, you're kind of learning and trying to figure out where you want to be. Betsy, let's go back to income for a second. And depending on what career we choose, there are limitations to how much income we can earn. Clearly, if you're in a sales profession, you might earn a little bit more, but you might have varied income. If you're in a management role, you might have a little bit more steady income. Do we need to do more education for families, guidance counselors, and most importantly, the students about, hey, I want to be that surgeon, but here are the things, it actually kind of dovetails nicely into that financial literacy discussion about budgeting and loans and managing debt. It's like, okay, what am I going to earn? And how do I make it all fit so that I don't have a lot of debt towards the end of my life?
Yeah, I mean, the Bureau of Labor Statistics has some awesome data that will tell you the average starting salary for your career path, not only just from a national level, but also from a regional level. So that can be a great tool, and bumping that up against the anticipated amount of debt that you might need to attend that school. I always encourage families to go through that exercise. Because let's face it, like if you calculate that, it looks like I'm going to have to borrow around 80 grand to go to school. I mean, we all know 80 grand is a big number. That number is not as meaningful as, if I take out this much in debt, I'm going to be making $1,000 payment every single month for 120 months. And oh, look, the average starting salary for my career only gives me a take home of $3,000. That's when the numbers become meaningful and impactful.
Yeah, and from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, there are a lot of people on the more mature end of the spectrum, so a little bit older, that have student loan debt. Either they have it because they went to school, maybe later in life, or are still paying it off, or they co-signed for someone else's loan, and so therefore they had this. So the last thing you want to do is burden yourself, your family, or an older family member like a grandmother, grandfather, aunt, and uncle.
Right. Don't take on more debt than you can afford to repay, even if you're the co-signer and you think the student's going to be able to pay it. I've seen so many scenarios where, for whatever reason, the student's unable or unwilling to pay it and the parent is stuck with it. So again, don't take on, they tell you not to lend money that you can't afford to not be repaid back. It's the same for borrowing or co-signing.
Absolutely. You don't want to buy too much house. You don't want to buy too much college. You don't want to buy too much car. Betsy Mayotte, it is always a pleasure chatting with you. Always enjoy these conversations. I walk out, like I said, a lot smarter. Our audience appreciates you coming on. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to having you back on again very soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
That wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, somebody you think we should talk to, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the information in retirement, markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. We're back again tomorrow. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Are you being audited, and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.